I want to kind of jump in here.
Yeah,
and the other thing too, when discussing, do we represent these things well? Do we understand these frames of knowledge properly? We create a big mess if we situate these dichotomies that either you are going to be a Christian or you are going to be a critical race theorist. Because what happens when you conflate critical race theory so much so that it's anti-Christian, so then all of a sudden you have someone who's learning about this, who has grown up in the faith, and then all of a sudden says, I think critical race theory makes sense, but apparently it's contradictory with Christianity. So now I have to drop my religion to carry this thing because no one bridged the gap. And we see this happen in North America all the time.
Say that.
With the discussion of evolution.
Say that.
Wow.
You think Christians in Europe had this? Christians in Europe were saying, okay, how can we understand evolution? Should we be scared of it? How should we engage it? Right? And then here in America, it was keep it out of the schools. We don't want to engage it at all. And then guess what?
Science in general.
Then all of a sudden, you have these Christians who were maybe homeschooled, were sheltered from evolution.
You were homeschooled, right?
I was homeschooled.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you go to college, not a Christian college. You go to a state school, and then all of a sudden, you have a professor who's a PhD, more brilliant than your parents, and they just describe what evolution is, and it makes sense to you, but all of a sudden, you think in your mind, evolution and Christianity cannot fit together. They're inconsistent, so now I need to drop my faith. We gave them no tools.
Wow.
No tools at all.
That's so good.
And so when we take critical race theory and we conflate it to this dichotomy, rather than seeing it as something that is so complex, diverse, that is changing, it's changing because humans are interacting with it.
Yes. Yeah.
Anytime a human takes a theory and does something with it, it is altered because it's being applied to that human being's perspective. Right? And so you're going to create a problem where there will be Christians. And if critical race theory is something that's being taught in schools, which by the way, if we are scared to teach lenses of interpretation,
what are we doing?
What
we're in trouble.
We're putting Christians in a bubble again. That's exactly what we want to do.
Like if we are not instructing our children how to apply different lenses to different things and interpret it for their sake, maintaining their autonomy. Lenses do not steal your autonomy. Right. You use them by way of your autonomy. You say, I want to understand this through this framework.
Right.
And so I myself am applying this because I see how this fits together. This is my stake in the argument, my stake in the game, right? If we're scared of a theory, I think we have bigger problems.
True.
But again, if we are just taking this and saying you can either be a Christian or you can be a critical race theorist, and there's no bridging conversation whatsoever, we're going to have big problems.
Brother, you hit that mug out the park. That thing is across the street, rolling down a hill. Because what we're talking about is also a battle for the soul of our children, man. Because that's the thing I think about with 3 kids myself. I am thinking about how do I want them to be equipped as they go into the world. I want them to have a faith that is robust.
Right.
I want them to have a faith that can hear things that contradict it. Things that say that it's wrong, or I want them to have a faith that isn't so hostile to something that may be a gateway. That's what we hear all the time. This may lead to something else.
It's a slippery slope.
This may, if we start entertaining these things, perhaps by before you know it, little Johnny is gonna be an all-out occultist. And when you do that, when you don't let the Spirit of God loose, when you don't say, hey, we're going to establish you have deep roots in Christianity so that when you cut, you bleed this. If that's not happening, but what you have is basically an atrophy of the soul where you've done nothing but allowed these people to never, ever exercise in the obstacle courses of life.
Right.
And all they have done is spent their time living in this bubble.
Yeah.
It will be burst.
Yes, it's going. That's the thing I feel like we don't understand, man.
And here's the thing that's going to hit you, because I don't believe in evolution. I have good brothers, and I don't believe in macro evolution.
I know what you're saying.
But I have brothers and sisters who I love dearly, who are spirit-filled, who do believe the way that God brought the world into existence was through evolution. Yeah. Well, not Big Bang. He created everything and then allowed things. I have good, godly people that believe that, even though I don't agree with them. But here's the thing. That has extended into science in general. There are certain things that are not hostile to the Bible. Dinosaurs are not hostile to the geology.
Science in general
is not hostile to the gospel, but we have made it hostile for so long. So our kids grow up hearing us talking about all these things in flat, unsophisticated, and untrue ways. Then they get into college and they hear things that are benign. They've been told to be running from science, and we can even go to cultural references to be running from Pokemon. So they get
Harry Potter. Now it's sociology. It's sociology.
But here's what happens. You begin to sort of run away and try it out, and you see that there's nothing wrong with this stuff, and then you start asking your question, well, if they were lying to me about this, what else were they lying to me about?
Right.
Were they also lying to me about Jesus?
Wow.
Because that is what I have been found. I understand some of my brothers and sisters in the evangelical movement are saying that they have people in their church that are becoming anti-racist or becoming, I don't know, critical race theorists. I don't know. I've never met these people before, but they say that they exist. I'm not going to try to argue with you and your experience, but let me tell you what my experience is. I have watched brother after brother, sister after sister punt the faith because they have learned that what it means to be a Christian in America is to deny the existence of the existential threat of racism and their experience.
Right.
Wow.
I've watched it over and over again. Do you realize that there's a mass exodus now? There's a mass exodus of black Christians again. First of all, there never was an integration.
Yep.
We never got integrated.
Right.
But we were starting to take strides towards the integration.
Exactly.
We saw it in our church. There was Memphis Fellowship in Memphis, Tennessee. There were all these pockets of a kind of, we're coming together in the banner of Christ. And then we started realizing that we don't all believe the same things again, which is okay.
Right.
It's okay. We don't all believe the same things about things that are not essential to our faith. But here's the thing. They started to have overlap with essential things, because you would say stuff like, if you believe that somehow black people have a disadvantage in this country, you are a Marxist, you are a critical race theorist,
right,
and you are
and now you're making it essential.
Now you've made it essential.
Right.
When you have done that, that people are leaving again. We're becoming more divided. The Pew Research has shown that on this issue, we are more divided than we've ever been.
Americans in general, and
that same thing is in the church, man.
Right.
And what I'm saying is, we are setting up the context for apostasy, trying to protect people from apostasy.
Right.
Because we're not willing to be honest, and we're also, fear is the opposite of faith. That's why I love when people start saying stuff like, I love people say we need to operate in faith and not fear. Fear is not, the opposite of fear is not being afraid.
Right, of course. The
The opposite of fear is trusting God. And let me say this, because what fear does is it looks at what's happening around them and says, this is all there is. I have to manipulate and control what is going to be my outcome. I do not trust God to have it, to have me. And what does the Bible say? In the Old Testament, there is not a command given to man more than fear not.
Right.
Over and over again, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. What should we do instead, God? Trust me. And if we do not give our children a kind of faith that can be tested and survive, that if we don't give them the kind of faith that's robust enough, that it has thought through and interacted in these spaces and still maintains its integrity and its quality, if we haven't given them that, how do we expect them to survive the onslaught? And what do we do when they recognize our true intellectual hypocrisy in the ways that we have not prepared them for this world? They will.
Because they will.
And they are.
Yeah. And the younger generation is.
Yes.
We're placing them in an intellectual non-contact sport, bro.
Yes.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah,
and once they go out there and feel that contact, they don't know what to...
Facts.
They don't know what to do with themselves.
Facts.
I don't know what I don't have the tools to deal with this. You hit me with a right hook. I don't have the tools to slip and defend myself. I don't know what to do.
Right.
So I lose. Guess what happens? I get knocked out and I lose. Facts.